I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't even supposed to be in the same room. But as I stepped into the private dining hall, wearing the navy blue jumpsuit I'd bought on my very first paycheck, every pair of eyes turned. Some in confusion, most in disgust. "Isn't that Caitlyn?" someone muttered. "She still thinks she belongs here?" Another voice, my aunt, I think, whispered sharply. "Did she really come dressed like that?" I could feel it, the stares, the judgments, the memory of being kicked out of the family group chat like I was an error they were correcting. 5 years ago, they called me trash and told me I'd never amount to anything. Tonight, they'd laugh again. But what they didn't know was this. The building they were dining in, the table they were seated at, even the wine they were sipping, it all had my name on it now. I never used to care what they thought of me. At least, that's what I told myself back then when I was 21. Fresh out of college, waiting tables to pay rent while my cousins posed in matching outfits for brunches paid with their parents' cards. They mocked me for working, for not joining the family business, for not marrying into someone else's. But I remember the night it all truly snapped. It was my father's birthday, and they held a dinner at the house I grew up in without telling me. I found out from a tagged photo on my cousin Mia's Instagram. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. I called my mother, confused, hurt. Her voice was flat. "You make things uncomfortable, Caitlyn," she said. "We didn't want a scene." A scene? I had barely spoken at the last family gathering, unless you count being asked to serve drinks because someone mistook me for staff. Still, I tried. I showed up the next day with a gift for my dad. A watch. Not expensive, but thoughtful. When I handed it to him, he didn't even look me in the eyes. Just muttered, "Thanks," and passed it to my brother to open. I stood there like a stranger in the only place that used to feel like home. And then came the worst of it. That afternoon, I overheard my uncle loud enough for everyone to hear say, "Honestly, I don't know why Caitlyn still shows up. She's just embarrassing." No one corrected him. Not even my mother. That was the day I left and didn't come back. For 5 years, I disappeared. I moved to another city, changed my phone number, blocked them all. I worked as a receptionist in a boutique hotel. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me everything from logistics to guest experience to budgeting. I studied the business like my life depended on it because, in a way, it did. At night, I'd stay late, watching how management handled chaos, how to negotiate with vendors, how to build a brand. Eventually, I saved up enough to invest in a small, run-down inn. Everyone said I was crazy, but I cleaned every room myself. I planted flowers out front. I made coffee for guests and asked them about their day. Slowly, it turned around. Within 2 years, I had opened a second location, then a third. I partnered with a developer who believed in what I was building. By year 5, I wasn't just back on my feet, I was sitting at the head of the table. Which brings us to tonight. The private dining space my family chose for my cousin's engagement dinner. It belongs to the hospitality group I now own. They didn't know that when they booked it. But they're about to. I didn't arrive in a limo. I didn't wear designer labels or make a grand entrance. That's never been my way. I came quietly, walking in from the service elevator just like I used to when I was a receptionist, blending into the shadows of my own empire. That was the point. I didn't want recognition, I wanted remembrance. The staff saw me first. Marcus, the floor manager, gave a subtle nod. He knew not to address me as Ms. Reyes tonight. Not yet. We'd planned it carefully. I would walk through the front just like any guest and wait. Just long enough. The dining room was everything I remembered from my old training days. High ceilings, warm lighting, marble accents. I used to dust those very chandeliers, back when my name was barely printed on a badge. Now, it was engraved on the ownership plaque behind the reception desk only my family had walked past without even noticing. As I approached the main table, I heard the laughter before I saw the faces. My cousin Mia, dressed head to toe in pastel tulle, was posing for selfies with her fiancé. My brother, Everett, held court like a politician, retelling the same college story I'd heard 100 times. And my mother? She sat upright, her pearls gleaming, whispering behind her wineglass, with that same judgmental tilt of the head I remembered so well. No one noticed me. Until they did. It started with a pause. My Aunt Eliza blinked in surprise, elbowed her husband. Mia lowered her phone. Everett's voice trailed off mid-sentence. "Oh," my mother said flatly, as if she'd seen a stray dog wander into the building. "You actually came." Before I could answer, a smirk broke across Mia's lips. "Did someone leave the back door open?" Laughter. I stood still. Let them have it. "You've got some nerve," Everett said, leaning back with a smirk. "Showing up here dressed like—" "I thought we reserved this space for close family only," Eliza added, dabbing her lips as if I were something unsightly. "Maybe she's working tonight," someone whispered. And that was the cue. Marcus appeared, smooth as ever, and said in his steady voice, "Ms. Reyes, your table is ready upstairs. The executive suite has been prepared as requested. Would you like champagne sent up now or after the main course?" Silence. The kind of silence that only follows a slate except no hand was raised. No voice had shouted. Just a name. My name. He turned toward the head waiter. "Make sure everything is perfect. Ms. Reyes is the owner, after all." I looked at Mia, then Everett. I saw it, the crack in their expressions, the frozen smiles, the pale confusion. Even my mother's mouth hung open, just slightly, before she closed it and reached for her napkin like that might somehow make her disappear. "I believe the reservation was under your name?" Marcus asked her, now perfectly polite but unmistakably firm. "Thank you for choosing our establishment." She didn't respond. And I just smiled. Not out of revenge, but because 5 years ago, they erased me. Tonight, they remembered. I didn't need to stay long. That was never the plan. But as I stood there, watching their reactions ripple across the table like a wave of cold water, I realized something. This wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It wasn't even about showing them who I had become. It was about reclaiming the space inside myself they once filled with shame. For years, I'd carried their words like bricks in a backpack. Every insult, every whisper, every time they said I'd failed or wasn't fit for this family. They'd thought their silence was a punishment, but it was my teacher. I turned to Marcus and nodded. "Champagne, please. Only for this table," I said, motioning to the group of stunned relatives. "Consider it a celebration of honesty." He smiled subtly. "Right away, Miss Reyes." I could feel Everett squirm. "Caitlyn, listen, we didn't know." "That I own this place?" I asked, tilting my head. "No, I know. You don't know much about me at all, actually." He flushed, glancing at Mia, who was now pretending to scroll through her phone like she hadn't just been part of the laughter moments earlier. "I mean," Everett fumbled, "we were just joking. You know how we are." "Exactly," I said, my voice low but calm. "You've always made sure I know exactly how you are." My mother cleared her throat. "This isn't necessary, Caitlyn. You've made your point." I looked at her then, truly looked. The woman who had once kissed my forehead goodnight now looked at me like I was a stranger, trespassing on sacred ground. "I didn't come here to make a point," I said. "I came because I finally could, because I no longer need permission to exist in your world." She blinked slowly, and I saw it just a flicker regret, or maybe fear, but it passed quickly, replaced by her well-worn mask of superiority. I turned away before it could get messy. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of drama. That was their language, not mine. As I walked out of the room, A waiter held the door for me. Another nodded with quiet respect. They knew. They all knew who I was, now not just in name, but in presence, in power. I headed up the staircase to the private suite prepared for me. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft jazz playing, a single orchid placed neatly at the center of the table. The kind of quiet luxury they'd always told me I didn't deserve. The kind they used to guard like a birthright. I sat down, took a deep breath, and let the silence settle around me like a warm coat. Outside the glass, I could see them below, still frozen, still whispering, still scrambling to make sense of it. Let them. For the first time in years, I wasn't outside looking in. I was above them literally and figuratively, and I didn't need to say another word. I let the glass of champagne sit untouched for a while. The bubbles rose and faded, but I didn't move. There was something strangely satisfying in the stillness, in watching the very family that once made me feel invisible now unsure of how to breathe in my presence. From my seat on the balcony, I could see everything. The waitstaff moving gracefully around them. My mother's stiff posture. Everett pouring a second drink too quickly. Mia whispering behind her hand like a teenager caught cheating. And all of it so far below me, not just in height but in weight. The weight was gone. For years, I had chased their approval in silence. I never admitted it out loud, not even to myself. But I used to stay up at night wondering what was so wrong with me. Why didn't I fit their mold? Why wasn't I good enough to be invited, to be loved, to be chosen? And slowly, painfully, I had built something stronger than their acceptance. My own worth. I thought back to the nights I spent scrubbing bathroom floors in my first inn, hands raw and mind numb. The rejections from banks, the nights I slept in the back office because I couldn't afford both rent and payroll. No one saw those moments. No one clapped. No family member called to say, "We're proud of you." But that's the thing about building something real, it doesn't need applause to grow. I sipped the champagne, finally, letting it fizz gently on my tongue. It tasted better than I remembered, not because it was expensive, but because I had earned every note of it. A soft knock on the door interrupted the moment. It was Marcus. "Your guest just arrived," he said gently. I blinked. My guest? He stepped aside, revealing a familiar face, David. My former mentor. The man who once took a chance on a desperate young woman who didn't even own a blazer for her first interview. "Hope I'm not late," he said with a warm smile. I stood quickly, heart catching in my throat. "What are you doing here?" "You told me once," he said, "that if this day ever came, I'd be the only one who truly understood what it meant." I laughed. It was true. I'd said that years ago, when we sat in a staff lounge eating vending machine chips and dreaming bigger than either of us could admit. "I had to see it," he said. "To see you. Look at you, Caitlyn. You did it." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Not from sadness, but from being seen. Truly seen. We sat together, not needing many words, just presence, just the warmth of shared memory, of mutual respect. Down below, the noise of the dining room continued, a distant hum I no longer needed to respond to. Let them laugh. Let them whisper. I was done seeking a seat at their table. I had built my own. And tonight, I chose who sat with me. Upstairs, in the quiet sanctuary of the private suite, I allowed myself to exhale for the first time that evening. The view through the tall windows framed the city like a painting, distant, glittering, and far removed from the world I'd just walked away from. The soft hum of jazz floated from the hidden speakers, unobtrusive and calming. I sat at the table, perfectly set for one, and stared at the untouched glass of champagne. It sparkled under the chandelier's light, delicate and celebratory. Yet I hesitated to drink it, not because I didn't want to, but because for once, I didn't feel the need to mark the moment with anything but breath. Below, I could still see the dining hall, where my family remained unaware that I had a clear view of them. My mother sat stiff. Everett looked restless. Mia picked at her phone, and the others tried too hard to act unfazed. They were trying to rewrite the narrative in real time, pretending they hadn't laughed, hadn't belittled, hadn't erased me. But I didn't need their confession. The silence that followed Marcus's words had said everything. They had been caught in the truth, and there was no turning back. For years, I had imagined this moment. In my loneliest nights, I pictured myself standing before them, powerful, unshaken, unrecognizable, in the best way. I had rehearsed comebacks, drafted speeches in my head, even imagined dramatic exits, but reality was quieter, softer, and strangely more satisfying. The real win wasn't in their shock, it was in my peace. I had already won the moment I walked in without needing their permission. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but my heart was racing. Not from confrontation, but release. A weight had lifted. The years I had spent believing I wasn't enough, too emotional, too ambitious, too outspoken, suddenly felt like scars that had turned into steel. I remembered the nights in my one-bedroom apartment, building my first business on scraps and hope. The time I couldn't afford groceries but still paid my staff first. The time my heat was cut off, but I still showed up at work with a smile. Those moments had shaped me, not their rejection, not their silence. A soft knock pulled me out of my thoughts. Marcus stepped in and nodded politely. "Your guest just arrived." I blinked, confused. I wasn't expecting anyone. He stepped aside. Standing behind him was David. I hadn't seen him in nearly 3 years, but the sight of him brought an instant warmth to my chest. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his voice as calm as ever. "You're the one person I'd let interrupt this," I said, smiling. He stepped into the room, took one look around, and grinned. "You did it." I nodded. "Yeah, I did." He didn't need a tour or an explanation. He had been there when I had nothing but plans and a worn-out notepad. We sat down at the table together, and for a long moment, we said nothing. We didn't need to. His presence reminded me of who I was before they broke me, how far I had come rebuilding myself. I finally lifted the champagne glass. This time, I drank. Not for them, for me. The knock on the door came just as I set down the empty champagne glass. This time, I knew it wasn't staff. I opened the door slowly, and there stood Everett. My brother, in his pressed charcoal blazer and smug hesitation. The same man who once laughed when Dad called me the family's biggest disappointment. His smile faltered when he saw my face. I didn't smile back. "Can I come in?" he asked, already stepping inside like old habits still had a place here. "Briefly," I replied, moving aside. He scanned the suite, trying not to look impressed. "So this is yours?" he said, gesturing vaguely to the room. "All of it?" "The whole hotel," I answered plainly. "And the winery across the hill, and the design firm in Denver that just finished this renovation." His jaw tightened. "Look, Caitlyn, I didn't come to fight." "That's good," I said. "Because you'd lose." He chuckled, a little forced, like he still thought we were playing some childhood game where he could talk his way out of the damage. "I came because, well, Mom's upset. Dad's embarrassed. Mia is still pretending none of this affects her, but we both know that's not true." "You came in like a wrecking ball tonight." "I came in quietly. It's not my fault the truth makes noise," I said. "Besides, I wasn't planning on revealing anything, until Mia asked the waiter to seat me with the cleaning staff. That one caught him off guard. He shifted his weight, suddenly less smug. She thought... No. I cut him off. She knew. You all did." He looked down for a moment, hands in his pockets, the picture of practiced regret. "We didn't know how to handle you back then. You always challenged everything. The way you talked, the way you pushed back. It made Dad nervous, made Mom furious. And honestly, it scared the rest of us. Why? I asked. Because I didn't want to marry someone you picked for me. Because I turned down the safe job in the city to open my own business with a startup loan and a dream. Because you didn't stay in your lane, he said, finally honest. Because you made us look lazy. That silenced the room. He didn't say it like an apology more, like a confession. I sat down slowly and looked at him across the table. So what now, Everett? You want to fix things? Rewrite the story? He shook his head. I wanted to see it for myself. You. All of this. I guess part of me hoped it was just rumors. That maybe you'd show up in a nice dress, make a few people jealous, and that'd be it. But it's not. You really did build something. And I'm not sure if I should feel proud or afraid. Try humbled, I said. It'll suit you better. He gave a weak laugh and started toward the door. Before he left, he paused. Dad's not going to say anything. He's too proud. But he knows, Kate. We all do now. Good, I said. That's enough. When he was gone, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one who needed to prove anything. They had finally seen me. And more importantly, I had seen myself, long before they ever looked. I wasn't surprised when the knock came again. It was too deliberate, too slow to be a staff member. David gave me a knowing glance and stood, giving me space, without needing to ask. I walked to the door, took a breath, and opened it. There she was, my mother, still dressed to impress in her pearl-trimmed navy jacket, clutching a designer purse like it was a shield. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she spoke, her voice low but urgent. May I come in? I stepped aside silently, watching her scan the room. Her eyes lingered on the soft lights, the fresh orchids, the untouched second-place setting. So this is where you've been hiding, she said. Not unkindly, but not warmly either. I didn't answer. She turned to face me, arms crossed, and I knew what was coming. Caitlyn, I think this has gone far enough. You've made your point publicly. You've embarrassed your brother, and your father is deeply uncomfortable. I raised an eyebrow. Uncomfortable that I exist? She pursed her lips. That you've chosen to come back like this, unannounced, grandstanding. Caitlyn, we raised you with class. This isn't it. I laughed. Quiet. Bitter. You raised me to stay quiet. To take the scraps and smile through it. Her eyes narrowed. That's not true, isn't it? When I left, you didn't call. You didn't ask if I was okay. You sent Everett to change the locks and Mia to tell the neighbors I was going through something. You erased me. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Maybe for once she didn't have a comeback. I continued, my voice steady. You told me I wasn't built for this world, that I was too emotional, too loud, too dramatic. But all I ever wanted was space to be myself without being treated like a burden. She stepped closer, her tone shifting. You don't understand the pressure we were under, Caitlyn. Your father's reputation, our position in the community. Say it, I interrupted. You were ashamed of me. She looked down, and that silence, that pause was all the confirmation I ever needed. I let the moment hang there, letting the weight of the years settle between us. Then I said what I had come here to say. I don't hate you. I'm not here to punish anyone. But I'm done trying to fit back into a family that never made space for me. This is my life now. And it's full. Without your approval. Without your conditions. She looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw something raw flicker across her face. Not anger. Not superiority. Just a flicker of uncertainty. She didn't respond, and I didn't expect her to. I stepped toward the door and opened it. You can go now, I said quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. Good night, Caitlyn. Goodbye, I said not cruelly, Not dramatically, just, finally. When the door clicked shut, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just stood there, free. I had faced the last ghost, and I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't expect him to come, not after all the years of silence, not after the way he stood by while I was erased. But as I stepped out onto the balcony for some air, I saw the familiar silhouette by the courtyard fountain me father. He was standing still, staring into the water like it might offer answers he couldn't form on his own. I stayed in the shadow of the doorway, unsure if I even wanted the moment. Then he turned slightly as if sensing me. "You're not going to make it easy, are you?" he said, without looking. I stepped forward, slow and measured. "Easy wasn't your concern when you shut the door behind me." He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Your mother told me you bought this place. Said you planned it all quietly. I suppose I should congratulate you." I didn't answer. The words meant nothing without weight behind them. He finally turned to face me, and I could see how much older he looked. Lines across his forehead that weren't there before. Eyes dulled, not by age, but by something heavier. Regret, maybe. Or just the weight of being seen. "You know," he said, "I thought I was protecting the family. Protecting you. You were always so defiant. So passionate. And I." He paused, searching for softer phrasing, then gave up. "I didn't know what to do with that." "So you chose to do nothing," I replied. "You let them mock me. You let them shut me out. And you said nothing when they treated me like the stain on your name." His hands tightened behind his back. "I thought you'd come back one day, ask for a place at the table again. I didn't expect." He looked around. "This. You didn't expect me to become the table," I said. "To build my own." He smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I should have expected. I just didn't want to be the father of the daughter who outgrew him." That landed heavier than I wanted it to, but I didn't let it soften me. Not yet. "What do you want, Dad?" I asked. "You didn't come here just to watch the koi." He met my eyes, and for the first time in years, there was no distance in them. "I wanted to say I'm proud of you, that I see you now, and I'm sorry I didn't sooner." A silence followed. Not hostile, not painful, just quiet, honest. I nodded. "I didn't build all this to hurt you, but I won't apologize for showing you who I am." He placed a hand on the stone railing. "I wouldn't want you to. Not anymore." And then, he did something I never imagined. He stepped forward and offered his hand, not as a father, not as a man expecting forgiveness, but as someone humbled. I took it, briefly, then stepped back. "Enjoy the rest of the evening," I said. "As a guest." His lips tightened into something that might have been a smile of surrender. Then he turned and walked away, and as I stood there watching him disappear into the golden lights of the courtyard, I realized I didn't need closure. I already had peace. The ballroom had mostly cleared out by the time I returned. Only a few guests remained chatting softly, sipping the last of their drinks, unaware that tonight had been anything but ordinary. Mia was gone. Everett too. My mother, I heard, left without a word the moment my title was confirmed. That figured. I walked past the grand floral display near the entrance, pausing to adjust a stray lily. Details mattered. They always had. A staff member approached, nervous, wide-eyed, and handed me the final ledger for the evening's event. I signed it without hesitation. This was mine now. Not just the signature. The authority. The name behind the name. I made my way to the center of the room, where the long banquet table still held remnants of the celebration half-full wineglasses, lipstick-stained napkins, plates with untouched cake. I stood at the head of the table for a moment, letting the silence stretch. Then, slowly, I pulled out the chair, my chair, and sat. Across from me was the very spot I'd once been denied at another family event, asked to serve hors d'oeuvre instead of being offered a plate. I remembered that night well. The shame, The heat in my face as I smiled through it. The voice in my head that said, "One day, they'll see." Tonight, they did. Not through vengeance or noise, but through elegance, timing, and power that didn't need to shout. That was the real winner, their recognition. But the fact that it no longer defined me. I didn't need an apology to feel whole. I didn't need a spotlight to feel seen. I opened my phone, scrolled through the photo from earlier, the one my assistant had taken when I first entered the ballroom. I was alone in it, standing tall, head high, the chandelier above casting soft light across my shoulders. There was no caption, just that single moment frozen in time. I saved it and sent it to myself with one note. She came home without bending. That was it. That was the story. Not of revenge, but of return. As I stood to leave, I glanced once more around the space. I thought about the girl who used to cry in break rooms on her lunch break. The girl who used to iron secondhand blazers just to look the part at interviews that never called back. The girl who used to whisper affirmations to herself in empty elevators, praying she wasn't wasting her time. She was still here. But now, she had keys to the building.